Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dick Gerback, and I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also the founder of a 33-year-old firm, Strategic Advisory Services, specializing in retirement income planning for those who are retired or for those individuals who are approaching retirement. Jeremy Joyner, our Senior Wealth Advisor and Certified Financial Planner, and Michael Wellings, our Director of Communications, will be discussing this very unique process, which is trademarked and is called Income in Stages, Money to Last. Hopefully you'll find it interesting and beneficial. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, Dick. Certainly appreciate the introduction. My name is Jeremy Joyner.
I'm Michael Wellings.
Yes, Michael. Michael's our Communications Director, as Dick mentioned. We've put together this presentation as a firm to illustrate our retirement income planning process. As Dick mentioned, we've been doing this quite some time. We have lots of resources available on it. Check out our website, askstrategicadvisory.com. That's one of our primary resources, or just give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to go ahead and get started with our fiduciary pledge. Bottom line, our fiduciary pledge is that we want to put our clients' interests ahead of our own at all times. That includes disclosing costs of doing business. That includes disclosing conflicts of interest. It includes any and everything having to do with our relationship. We want to put our clients' interests ahead of our own. The industry does not always carry this standard. There's been some laws recently changed in favor of the fiduciary standard. Check it out, learn more. I think you'll see that if you're going to hire an advisor, you want them to carry themselves to this standard. We're going to dive right into our retirement income planning process now with our 5 big risks in retirement.
So everybody, as Dick mentioned, we've been in this industry for a long time, and we've been specializing in retirement income planning for just that amount of time. So our first big risk that we've noticed during that time is an increased life expectancy risk. Bottom line, people are living longer than they used to. It's a fact, and it's something that everybody needs to plan for.
Inflation risk. The things you buy today are going to be more expensive in the future. When you build a financial plan, you have to assume that what you buy now will not cost what it does today, and you're going to need to plan for it.
Third, everybody, is a healthcare risk. So being so close to MD Anderson, we know what the cutting edge of medical technology is. And I've got news, it's not getting cheaper, and it will continue to get even more expensive in the future, and it's a significant risk to retirees.
And the big one, the elephant in the room, maybe even the reason you're watching this, is the market risk. Markets go up and down. That's a reality. We can't change it. Stocks, the market, are equity-like investments. Some days they do really well, other days they do really poorly, and some days it's just something in between. What an investor does during the cycle of the markets, whether they're selling low, whether they're buying high, whatever they do emotionally tends to have a lot of impact on their ultimate result in retirement. We hope the plan that we present to you today helps put a lot of that in perspective so you can make good decisions.
And finally, the fifth and final big risk in retirement that we've found is providing financial support for other family members. So as a recent college grad, I've seen my peers go and try to find jobs after graduation and fail. And they'll move back in with mom and dad who might be on a fixed income, so it's a big financial burden to them, and it's something that retirees everywhere are facing.
The other one is aging parents or grandparents. As obviously a financial responsible person, or you wouldn't even be watching this presentation, you might find yourself in the position of having to support your less responsible or less capable family members. And that can be quite expensive. And in a lot of cases, folks don't plan for that, and it can severely disrupt your retirement. So we know statistically, Michael and I have done a lot of videos together, and statistically, folks want to click off right about now. Our attention span as a society has gone way down. You can check out some studies on that. Just hang on with this is all we ask. The good part's coming, we promise. See this thing through, because it just might be the answer you're looking for your retirement income. The traditional approach to retirement income is a 60% stock, 40% fixed income allocation. So when we're talking stock, again, that's equity. That's ownership in companies. Even a well-diversified stock portfolio will be volatile. It will go up and will go down. And having an all-stock portfolio, one without any fixed income, in most cases will scare a retiree because of the volatility, and it should. In all likely cases, it's just too volatile for a person achieving or requiring income from a portfolio. Contrast that to an all fixed income strategy, which is where a lot of folks would like to be. What's the barrier? You got to save a fortune if you're going to invest in all fixed income, because you're going to have to cash flow the inflation problem, and that's not easy, because inflation is 3.25% every single year on average. So the industry said, well, if you can't have an all stock portfolio and you can't have an all fixed income portfolio, we've come up with this incredible academic solution. It's called, we're just going to stick it in the middle, right in the middle. Balanced portfolio. The stock, being 60% equity, has a chance to grow. The fixed income might provide some stability. And you can take out 4 to 4.5% of that out each year, increase that with inflation over time, and you'll achieve your goals. What's the problem?
Well, the problem is that you aren't going to get 5 to 7% returns each year.
Will not happen.
It will not happen. And so if there's a down year in the market, and you have income needs, you're going to have to pull out of your portfolio. You're going to have to pull out of those stocks when they're down, which is not a good thing.
So to illustrate that point, in 08 and 09, the market dropped 57%. We saw folks that are trying to execute retirement income out of the 60-40 strategy selling stock when it was down in value. So let's say you start with 1,000 shares. It's 2007. The market's at a high point. You get down to the bottom of that recession, that bear market, maybe you only have 750 shares left. That price of that stock or that mutual fund may come back to where it was in 2007, but if you don't have the same number of shares to go with it, you lose. You won't recover as fast. So we know bear markets are going to happen. That is a fact. If you think you're going to get through retirement without experiencing a bear market, you're wrong. You're going to have probably multiple bear markets. How you approach that is so critical. A bear market is a 20% drop from a prior high, and can you afford to ride that out? Inflation is a guarantee. It will get more expensive. Can your portfolio handle it? What if disaster strikes? It is inevitable. Things are not going to go perfect. It may not be a disaster, but it might be a change in income. It might be a change in expenses or a healthcare problem that causes your life to get more expensive. Can your strategy handle that? And will you be able to provide for long-term care? There's multiple ways to approach the long-term care problem. The most traditional are insurance or self-funding it. Insurance is expensive up front typically, but can obviously eliminate that problem down the road. But not everybody qualifies for long-term care insurance, and not everybody can afford it. The other one is self-funding it. Quite expensive. We want to help you think through that problem when it comes to retirement income. So what is our solution?
So guys, we've taken those risks of retirement in mind, and over the years we've developed Income and Stages Money to Last, as Dick mentioned earlier. So what Income and Stages Money to Last, what it is at its core, is trying to mitigate those risks that we spoke about earlier. So what we do is we divide your IRA account, your retirement account, into 6 separate stages, each equaling 6 years. So as you can see right here, stage 1 is years 1 through 6, stage 2, years 7 through 12, stage 3, years 13 through 18, stage 4, years 19 through 24, stage 5, 25 through 30, and our legacy stage, which is years 30 and on.
And what we want to do is we want to invest differently for each particular stage. In other words, one size investment strategy does not fit all. The way you invest for stage 3, years 13 through 18, should very much be different than the way you invest for stage 5, years 25 through 30. And here's what that looks like. Instead of having that traditional just 60-40, we want to invest very conservatively for stage 1, typically around 0 to 10% stock overall. There's not a lot of volatility with that, not a lot of growth. And we'll get into that here in a moment about what stage 1 actually looks like and the purpose for it. Stage 2, Michael mentioned that's years 7 through 12 of retirement, or 6 through 12, somewhere around that range. That is typically starting out at a 40% stock strategy. Why have we added stock? It's just basic. Time horizon. If you've got 6 years before you need an investment, you can take some risk with the equity component because you don't need it for a while. Stage 3, 60% stock. We're talking money that's not to be used for 12, 13 years. We can take a little bit more equity risk because you don't need it right now. Stage 4, 5, and legacy. So now we have got all 6 stages on the table here, each invested differently for each purpose. 5, for instance, 100% stock. I was talking earlier about the volatility you might expect from that strategy. Volatility is okay. Why?
Because you don't need this money for 2 decades or more.
You've got the time horizon to do it. If you're advising 30-year-old self how to invest and save, one of the first things you'd say is be aggressive, because over a long period of time, the markets has done very well. You want to participate in it.
Jeremy, I've got a quick question for you too. Say I wanted to take a little bit more risk in my earlier stages. Is this plan just rigid and fixed, or can we implement some changes based on my needs?
No, it's very customizable. I mean, that's one of the things that folks, when we initially discussed, started asking about is, what if stage 2 for somebody is more like a 20% stock strategy than 40% stock because of their risk tolerance? Some people just don't have the tolerance for volatility that others do. Certainly we can customize that approach. The characteristics of stage 1.
Right, everybody. So as Jeremy mentioned, the characteristics of stage 1, it's going to have approximately 6 years of inflation-adjusted living expenses. These assets are typically going to be 90 to 100% invested in fixed income, cash, and cash equivalents. And this is the key thing to remember, guys. The goal for this stage is to provide you or the client income and not necessarily growth. So you might be asking yourselves, well, Jeremy, Michael, why aren't you growing my money? I want to grow my money. I want some more money. What's the deal? Well, what we're trying to do is avoid market volatility as much as possible.
Because we don't know what the market is going to do over the next 6 years. We have an idea, but you wouldn't want to bank on that.
No, you wouldn't want to do that without 100% certainty. And if somebody says, hey, I know for 100% certainty that the market's going to give returns of 7% every year for the next 6 years, you need to turn around and run away and go tell the SEC about this guy, because nobody knows what the market is going to do.
So in the event of a recession or a bear market, your immediate needs are covered by with what's in stage 1. And we'll illustrate exactly how that gets funded here in a moment. So stage 2 through legacy, the growth stages, this is again when we start adding in those equities. So stage 2, 40%, 4, 5, you can see illustrated here. As time goes on, we add more stock to the picture because you have a better time horizon and more favorable time horizon to achieve the goal long term. So you'll notice both legacy and stage 5 are 100% stock. They're not always actually the same 100% stock portfolio. The stage 5 will typically have more managed volatility assets, while legacy, we're not trying to manage volatility at all. So what happens after 6 years? Well, stage 1 is ended. The assets that we originally invested there are typically depleted, somewhere down near zero. We rebalance things internally. Stage 2, originally 40% stock, becomes the new income stage, invested in 90 to 100% fixed income, cash equivalents. Stage 3, 4, 5, legacy are all then shifted down one step in structure. Typically, that's not always the case. Some people like to maintain that more aggressive allocation, but we have a conversation about it. But that shift occurs, so as you get older, the possibility of getting more conservative certainly is on the table and will be discussed. And remember, we're still targeting that overall 60% asset allocation as we discussed earlier.
Right, everybody. So this gives you just another look about how we go about this distribution analysis and what this plan structure typically looks like. So as you can see right here, you just met us. You thought, okay, let's do this, strategic advisory services. So we're in stage 1, the income producing stage, first 6 years of retirement. 6 years goes by. Well, now we're in stage 2. You can see that stages 3, 4, 5 and legacy were all shifted down the allocation structure, except for legacy, which remained at 100% stocks. And we're going to go into why that is here in a few minutes. So here we keep going. We're now in stage 3, years 13 through 18. Stage 3 is now the income producing stage, and stages 4 and 5 were shifted down according to risk tolerance. Here we are in 19 years down the road. We're in stage 4, and that's now the income producing stage. Stage 5 is now your assets and growth along with your legacy, which has remained fully invested. And finally, here we are 25, 30 years down the road. Hopefully you thought to yourself, man, it was a great decision choosing to do business with these guys. But let's take a deeper dive into this legacy stage. Jeremy, what exactly is it and why do we have it?
Well, some people want to leave what they started with to their heirs or to a charity or church type of organization. That's less common, but it happens. So if you start with $1 million, they often, if that's the case, the goal, they want to leave $1 million on the table when they're gone for some other people. Often it's more we want the last check to bounce at the funeral home. And well, that's funny. That's a harder thing to plan for, because certainly we don't know when somebody's going to pass away. But everybody's got different goals. With legacy, it's really longevity protection. It's the unexpected that we want to try and fund in retirement. So if you're 10 years in and all of a sudden you have experimental surgery that's needed, there's a place to go and grab some assets that don't affect your actual income. And that's the primary function for legacy. So the 5 big risks, again, we wanted to address. Number 1, market risk. We can't control the markets, nor can you, nor can anybody else. They will be volatile. You can use that to your advantage through the multi-stage process. Increased cost of living. We know the things you buy are going to get more expensive. Life expectancy. You might live a long, long time, and you've got to make sure your money's there in case you do. Providing for your family. If it's a goal to leave a legacy, you're able to do that. It's also, to be honest, providing for your family also means being financially responsible for yourself. So you don't want to be a burden on your kids when you're in your elder years. And healthcare risk. Ultimately, the cost of healthcare is an unknown. We all know that. It's certainly getting more expensive. But what we like to do sometimes, or a lot of times, we'll split out what we think the cost of healthcare will be. We can grow that at a different expectation, different rate throughout retirement. So we're going to run through a sample here as we start to close this presentation.
Right, everybody. So I'd like to introduce you to John and Mary. John and Mary, they're 65 years old and they're ready to retire. They've had a long career. They see the end of the rainbow. Let's retire. So they've accumulated about $1 million in retirement assets, and they're expecting to receive about $36,000 a year from Social Security. So along with that, we have their needs in retirement, which come with non-discretionary needs of about $75,000 per year. So non-discretionary needs, these are the have-tos. This is what John and Mary need to keep the lights on, to feed themselves, to keep the water running. Aside from that, they've got discretionary needs of $10,000 a year for 10 years. So these are the want-tos. These are the I'd like-tos. Along with those discretionary needs, we've got travel, where they'd like to budget $5,000 a year for 15 years, go on a few trips, and finally, they'd like to leave $1 million legacy for their 2 children.
So we start with a preliminary planning process. This process is designed to answer the "how much do I need" question quickly. This is the first question people often want answered when we meet. Is we don't really know where we stand. We've never done this before. We know we got about $1 million. Is that enough? And so we want to answer that as fast as we can so that we can move on to bigger and better planning processes. We also want to know if you're way off so we can start helping you make some adjustments to your current saving strategies and expense targets to help you get better prepared for retirement if you're not there. But in this case, we've illustrated John and Mary's problem. They're 65. They need $75,000 a year. They want that to increase with inflation, 3.25%. We've got Social Security, $36,000 a year for that. Their travel, their miscellaneous discretionary needs, all that combined, these folks need about $1 million to achieve the goal. So very quickly, we're able to answer for John and Mary. You're there. You're close. If you're ready to retire, you could strongly consider doing so. What if it showed up they need $2 million and they don't have it? Well, then it's a different problem. We go into the how can we help you achieve either having $2 million or ratchet your lifestyle down to something more affordable. Then it goes into a breakdown of actual income and needs, and then ultimately portfolio. What does the portfolio need to produce in any given year to keep John and Mary retired? Well, in year 1, we've got a $75,000 need, of course, $15,000, almost $16,000 discretionary needs. We've got no income from Social Security yet, so they need $90,000 from the portfolio. So that falls into stage 1. Go 10 years in the future, $100,000 need. That's inflation. That's not some sort of growth. That's just what they need to actually buy the same amount of goods and services they did in year 1. $20,000 for those discretionary needs. $46,000 from Social Security. So ultimately they need $75,000 from the portfolio in year 10, and year 10 happens to fall in stage 2 of retirement. So we need to know that we have enough assets starting in stage 2 to fund that way down the road. And so in their particular case, we'd recommend this type of strategy. Instead of that traditional 60-40, we'd start with about $298,000 in stage 1 to fund that first 6-year need. Stage 2, 40% stock strategy for them, $238,000 to fund that stage 2 need. 3, 4, 5, and legacy, our recommendations are 60% stock with about $187,000 in stage 3, 80% stock in stage 4, about $138,000, and then stage 5 and legacy, both 100% stock, $99,000 there, and respectively $76,000 for the legacy. So this is where we start. We start with this recommendation. What's really cool or really great is with SEI, our custodian, if you've got one IRA, we're able to implement all these strategies within one IRA. Doesn't mean we can't help you if you've got more than one account registration. Certainly we can. We can do this within multiple IRA accounts or after-tax accounts, you name it. But you'll notice the aggregate, all this combined, is still around 60% stock overall. So when we think about that, you think, well, guys, you just bashed the 60% stock strategy earlier. What gives? Well, we're not saying it's not appropriate. What we're saying, because it's very much appropriate when you consider inflation and trying to keep pace with the rising healthcare costs. You got to have that equity. What we're saying is the structure and how you go about producing the income from your portfolio matters a whole lot and should be readdressed, in that we do so with this income and stages money to last process. So ultimately, we want to stress test a financial plan, and Michael's going to go through how we do that.
Right, so one of the really cool tools that we have at our disposal is what we call the stress test. So that's where we take your assets, your needs, the allocation we've recommended, and we put it into this piece of software, and it runs it against 1,000 different market scenarios. So that's good markets, down markets, sideways markets, zigzag markets, every kind of market that's imaginable. And it spits out the probability of success. So in this case, John and Mary have an 84% probability of success. What exactly does that mean? Well, that means that out of the 1,000 market scenarios we've run, 840 of them came back with John and Mary being able to succeed in their retirement goals. Another really cool piece of the software is, if you notice on the left side, it factors in several different options that people face in retirement. Say you want to buy a new house. Say you found another source of income. If you have just other expenses, if you want to buy a boat or a truck, we can factor that in and rerun this stress test to see how it affects your probability of success. And if you stay within a reasonable probability, we'll say, yeah, run with it. And if not, then we just got to sit down and talk about how we can make it work and how we can address these risks a little bit better.
Yeah, and why 84% and not 100% in this case? Well, some of the scenarios, like anything else statistically, are absurd. If you look on the right-hand side of this chart, there's a 2.5% chance that they might have $20 million or somewhere near $20 million at the end of their life. It's a very unlikely scenario. And so we don't really want to target 100% necessarily, because it includes this very, very slim chance as well as this slim chance, which means they actually run out of money. That's the same probability, by the way. That's a 2.5% chance as well. So somewhere in the middle is what produces that 84% probability of success that we're targeting. So in conclusion, we thank you so much for your time and attention. This is our team. Of course, we have Dick Gerback, founder, president of the firm, and Susie Gerback, also founder, vice president of the firm, the real backbone of our processes, of our procedures. She makes sure the bills get paid. We can't speak to her team and the value she provides enough. Of course, myself and Michael here on the left side. I want to introduce Emily Wellings, our financial planner, and Pam Hext. Everybody knows Pam, our director of first impressions. She's the face to our scheduling. She's the face to our quarterly calls, our outreach, and certainly if you've been a client at any sort of time, you know who Pam is. Again, thank you for your time. What resources do we have available for them to learn more?
Right, everybody. So if you've got questions that need to be answered, I encourage you to do a few things. Number one, head on over to our website, askstrategicadvisory.com. We've got a great blog there that addresses a bunch of really interesting topics that we feel might be on people's minds. Jeremy does a weekly video where we talk about events during the week.
When we twist Dick's arm, he's in it too.
That's right, Jeremy's not alone. We can get Dick in there sometimes. But if you've really got any real burning questions, then just do what I like to do. Pick up the phone, give us a call, 713-977-3800. Any one of us would be really glad to speak with you.
Again, thank you. Have a good one.